Good morning. Over time, it has been my pleasure to introduce Susan Nelson on 4 different occasions. On 2 of those occasions, the programs were about Susan's mother, Dorothy Olson, who was considered, and I quote, the toast of Chicago for 84 of her nearly 103 years. Dorothy Olson played and sang in every important venue in Chicago and was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Chicago Federation of Musicians. Her daughter, Susan Poletti Nelson, did not sit idly by, but developed her own skills over many years. Susan is Italian American, Spanish teacher, poet, cross-country skier, mother of 5 and grandmother of 9, and is currently her family's matriarch. She holds an advanced degree in social sciences, traveled to 104 countries, bicycled through half of the 50 states, and traveled in the remaining states. Susan speaks Italian, has traveled to Italy multiple times, and has researched old manuscripts in the archives of small Tuscan towns. Her findings, along with the stories from her immigrant relatives, answer questions her family's youngest generations wanted to know. She writes poignantly about the meaning of an ancestor and attempts to answer the question for all of us why it is important to learn about the ancestors in our families. I think that Susan Nelson has earned the honor many times over of being called a resident Renaissance woman. Let's give a big welcome to Susan Nelson.
So I would like to know if you folks know who is the name, what is the name of your immigrant mother? She's not your mother necessarily. She's not your grandmother necessarily. She might be someone who came over on the Mayflower. She might be someone who is a daughter of the American Revolution. But she is the woman who bridged the gap between homeland and new land, America. And if you know the name of that woman, would you please just say it now reverently into the airwaves? I left my homeland to go for America. I sell the small farmland, and with a few lire we board the big ship. The trip, it take 3 weeks. We get sick, cold. The boat, it drag back and forth. It creaks and stinks. I thinks about my 6 figli with me. Angelo, Anita, Alfonsa, Tozzella, Umberto, e il mio bambino, Giulio. Hungry, thirsty, tired, dirty. I sell the land so we get the ticket, so we cross the ocean. My husband, poverino Angelo, he died of the consumption. It was difficult for me. My figli, my children, they need the opportunity. We go for America. No, non parlo l'inglese. I don't speak it English. But I know where to go. The boat get to Ellis Island when it cross the ocean. Then we get the train to my cousin, il mio cugino. He live in Chicago. No, I don't know where he lived there, but I have his name on the paper. I ask around, and when I find him, Ihapa sa settle down. Giuditta Paoletti, 3 di agosto del 1902. So, opportunity? Homeland was embroiled in turmoil. Il Partito Socialista Italiano had just formed a few years previous to that. And there were riots, protests in the street of pane e lavoro, bread and work. And there were demonstrations against high taxes and no food. And there were violent killings in the streets. Police officers were shooting into the crowds. And the government was corrupt, especially targeting any government workers. Giuditta's husband was a tax collector in a small town. On top of that, homeland was in the period of expansion, colonial expansion in Northern Africa, Eritrea, Tunisia, Libya, and Ethiopia. And it lost. And tens of thousands of troops were being maimed and killed. Giuditta had 3 sons. And on top of that, King Umberto had just been assassinated. They didn't leave for opportunity. They left for survival. Did she ever find her cousin in Chicago? In 1902, Chicago was the fastest growing city in the world. It had gone from a town of 300,000 in 1870 to a metropolis of 1.7 million people. Surely the advances in transportation, the innovations in industry, but most importantly, the 1893 Columbian World's Exposition really put Chicago on the world map. So how would she find her cousin in such a vast population? But Chicago was a collection of neighborhoods. So you have the Bohemian neighborhood, and you have the Polish neighborhood, and you have the Irish neighborhood, and of course, you have the Italian neighborhood. And one more little factoid. Notice Giuditta Federighi, and she's listed as Giuditta Paoletti. In homeland, and maybe in your homeland, it was the custom for the children to get the name of the father and for the mother to keep her own name of her family. But when our relatives would have come here, they would have wanted to fit in with the customs to the land they were coming to. So, who was the immigrant mother in your family? How did she get here? Do you know? Was it by boat? Was it by plane? Was it in some kind of wagon? Do you know the name of the boat? And so I would like for you to think about that answer as we continue. La Bretagne, when Giuditta made the trip to America the first time, she went on this particular boat. But you know, folks, timing rules. Timing is everything in travel. Just to think, when those relatives came over, what was the landscape like? How were they able to navigate from point A to point B? Here's the Lakeshore Limited, which started service from New York to Chicago in 1897. Here's the 20th Century Limited, which started service in June of 1902. And here is the second LaSalle Street station. You know why? Because the first LaSalle Street station was demolished in the Chicago fire. And this second LaSalle Street station was demolished in 1903, at the very beginning of 1903. Judita and her children arrived at the end of 1902. And look, here's the Van Buren streetcar tunnel. This is completed in 1892, a mere decade before they arrived. And here is the elevated. And there was an elevated new station, the elevated stop at the LaSalle Street station that was constructed in 1897. And Ellis Island, so when these people arrived in Ellis Island, it was an island. And after they would be processed, have you ever thought, how would they have gotten from Ellis Island to the mainland? Well, Ellis Island provided ferry service to its terminal in New York City. And those going beyond New York were taken to the train station and guided to the correct terminal and the actual platform by railroad agents. So just think, that Lakeshore Limited was a coach service, probably coming in coach, not the elegant service, would have been the way that most of our relatives, most of our ancestors would have arrived. But it took more than 30 hours pulled by steam locomotives, which created constant soot, smoke, and cinders, and often crowded with wooden benches and straight backs and filth and foul air and dirty people, basic toilets, and often only a few snacks sold, although drinking water was available. And then after arriving in Chicago, Judita had three options. She had the tunnel trolley, there it was. She had the elevated, there it was. And she had the streetcar. And they all had just been started a few years earlier. And they would have gone right down Van Buren to Halsted Street. Why Halsted? And here, at the end of December, the beginning of January, we know that it's snow and cold, and trudging through that snow and cold with 6 children under the age of 12 years old. Why Halsted Street? Do any of you have an idea why Halsted Street? No. Wait a minute. Where am I going now? Hull House. Hull House, 800 Halsted Street, 4 blocks away from the Van Buren intersection with Halsted. Founded in 1889, a little more than a decade before she got there. And I want you to think, what coincidences of timing did your ancestors take advantage of? Hull House became one of the most influential settlement houses in the country by 1900 due to its innovative programs and impact on social reform precisely when Judita and her children needed the help the most. Do you think they had appointments? Of course not. They showed up. They all just showed up. And guess what? The doors flung wide open for them, and they got their first. And I'm not just talking about Judita. I'm talking about the immigrants of all of us. They got their first roof. They got their first kitchen. And look at how progressive. I'm a foreign language teacher. Look at how progressive this was. The kitchen of Hull House to learn to cook and speak English in the immersive experience. The first school. The first social life moment for those people. And Hull House would have then connected to different social agencies in the neighborhoods in the city for whatever the ethnic group was. And so in the case of this ethnic group, here's St. Michael's Italian Roman Catholic Church at 24th and Oakley. And look at the timing of this. It's like threading the eye of a needle in terms of arrival. Established in 1903 and then closed in 2003. This church served the community and served as a settlement house, as a social service agency in concert with Hull House for 100 years. I wonder if you know your immigrant mother, your immigrant family, if they ever had the services of Hull House. This is not a commercial for Hull House, but it was one of the first and most progressive settlement places in the United States. And in her case, the heart of Chicago has a rich history as the first Little Italy of the city, settled by Northern Italians from Toscana and Piemonte in the 1890s, and she arrived in 1902. I want to know, where did the immigrant mother in your family settle when she arrived in America? Raise your hand if you even know. Look at that, just a handful, just a few of you. I'll teach you later how you can do the research to find out the answer to that question for yourselves. So, why am I focusing on the woman instead of the man? Okay, what was the woman's place in 1902? Let's take a look. Here are the three sisters. Here are the three daughters that Judita came with. Here's Ella, Tozella. Here's Alfonsina, Florence. And here's Anna. These are my great aunts. And I wrote a poem about the toil of female workers in Chicago's garment district as a tribute to these three sisters, my great aunts, as well as to all the girls and young ladies who survived the harsh working conditions, the cruelty, and the abuse they endured in order to earn a meager living. And actually, it is also a tribute to those who did not survive. And the poem is 39 lines long. I'm not going to read all 39 lines, but I do want you to have the essence and the visual. A white slave girl in Chicago. I worked some years now. I sew in a factory in one of the Chicago garment places. I quit the school when I'm 12 to help mama sew stitch collars and cuffs and face of clothes. To get to the work, hundreds of us girls climbed the 4 flights of dark, slippery stairs past toilets and closets, sick smell and table bad light were girls buying the seams. I go to my machine in the rows, small space, dark, dirty air, garbage on the floor, black over here from oil, sewing needle stitching too fast for my tired hands. I sit hunched over 12 hours a day to sew. It seems day never end. I hungry, no lunch. I scared now. Poor lady turn and stare. She come lean over me, rip out my stitches, tell me do it over, she go down the back stairs. I work faster, I work harder, but each day only a few cents go into my hands. I can't stay. The bells, spindles, big noise, machines roar so loud I seem to go deaf and my eyes, they hurt very much. I am trapped in the place. I cough a lot. Maybe I got pneumonia. I feel weak. I feel sick in the face. Poor lady hear me cough. She tell me go home. I lose all my wages. What I hear? Emilio Grandinetti from my neighborhood help Italians dare to join the labor union. Yes, he show us how to picket in the streets and help us face the arrest and the jail. Illinois passed a law so we work only 10 hours. I get bad dreams about poor lady rip out my seams. A woman, Senora Jane Addams, help all of us. She speak from the stairs to the Hull House newspaper reporters. She and a helper work hand in hand for something called child labor laws. So not so bad in the fact that we don't have to face. And the old ladies I know who stay most of their life in those shops so tired in the faces, what about them? I tell them someday we get to vote, to have the laws. We join the hands and House give us the food. The older ladies get very angry, all the lies they hear, so they strike in the streets too. They leave the factory. They leave the 4 ladies in the stairs. They never return to the horrible sewing rooms in the garment place. I share this story from my place because I want you to know what it was like. You see these hands? They work every day in the garment place, even when they're tired and stiff. Now they stop as I face the end of my life. I hear the cries of the ladies I led in my neighborhood so we get to vote. No more stairs. No more stairs. Ah, it's, thank you. Thank you. Why, the women and the girls, sometimes as young as 12 years old, worked 12 to 14-hour days, bent over sewing machines before laws, mostly unenforceable and unenforced, were passed in an effort to protect the abuses to children in the workforce. The factory law of 1893 banned children younger than 14 from working in factories. The Child Labor Act of 1903 banned night work for children and required proof of school attendance. These aunts of mine worked in the sweatshops from the time they were 12 years old. One of them completed the 5th grade, and the other two made it all the way to the 8th grade, but could not graduate because of work. What kind of work did your ancestors do in the new land? When they first arrived, especially? Do you even know? You can find out. And so, let's see here. This is a property deed of a street, 1501 Nelson Street. I don't own the street. Chicago was signed on March 19th, 1937 as follows. Look at this. Frank Pellicci, signature of the owner. Anna Pellicci, signature of the owner's spouse. Well, that's a double whammy. Not only did she not own the property equally, but the spouse owned her. Before 1974, for women, there was no home ownership, no credit card, no professional careers for women with few exceptions, no rentals in more affluent communities. My mother, in 1960, had to find herself a man in order to be able for us to have a beautiful apartment in East Rogers Park. She could not sign that lease by herself, even though she made more money than most men back then. And before August 26th of 1920, when the 19th Amendment was added to the Constitution, there was no right to vote. Judita and her 6 children arrived in 1902. 3 of those children were daughters. How did these restrictions impact the female ancestors in your family? Do you know? Did your aunts or any of your other female relatives ever talk about it with you? In spite of restrictions, legal or otherwise, and I'm not addressing just to the women, I'm talking to you men as well. A mother acting on behalf of the protection and welfare of her children is surely one of the most powerful, universal forces known to mankind. To think, it is astounding that in less than 1 year, Judita became a widow in January of 1902 and refused to become paralyzed in any state of grief. Instead, she found childcare for 6 children, took a transatlantic trip to America, and worked there for a few months, crossed the Atlantic again back to Italy by mid-July, sold her property, settled her finances, packed, made travel and housing arrangements for a short stay in Naples, left the village with 6 minor children and took a train to Naples, a journey of at least 2 days that required changes of trains in at least 3 major railway stations, Lucca, Florence, and Rome, then awaited the ship's departure in December, crossed the Atlantic yet again, and arrived in the new land on Christmas Eve of that same year, all 7 of them in sound health. Incredible, the fortitude of that woman to accomplish all that in less than 1 year leaves me in a state of awe. Here's the actual ship's manifest. And you can find the ship's manifest of your ancestors. The ship's manifest lists Judita on line number 25 as Paoletti, Judita, and 6th child, abbreviated for children. She is listed as a widow from Bagni di Lucca, unlike Umberto Masucci on line 28 of the manifest, who is listed as having insufficient means. No such designation was given to our clever ancestor, in spite of arriving as a family of 7, she being a widow, and there it is right there. Do you have any scandals or mysteries in your family? I would like to see a show of hands of those of you who have a scandal or a mystery in your family. Let's see it. Oh, come on. There's surely got to be more scandals and mysteries than that. All right. Here's Sam. And you can read about this in this book that I've written, which I did bring some copies in case anybody is interested. Sam, the man with 4 surnames. What's with that? Paoletti, Sansa, Sansone, and Sonsieri. What's the story of that mystery? Or what about this? Angelo Paoletti. He was the firstborn. But you know what? By the time he was 12, he was a savant, because by the time he was 12 years old, just as they were crossing the ocean, he was absolutely unbeatable at pool. From the greatest arrogant SOBs to the fat, slobbering, gut-filled scoundrels, nobody could beat him at pool. And so he realized that he could seek his fortune, go out west, young man, playing pool and supporting himself. So unbeatable at pool and seeking the hope of the wild frontier, making his way to California. Whatever happened to him? This is a postcard to his sister, Tozzella Paoletti, without an address on it. Why? This is a mystery. Do you have any of your relatives who have mysteries? Do you know? Let me rephrase that. Is there any relative that you have had that you don't know what happened to them? What happened to them? And what about this? Here's Lori Gragnani, born in September of 1914, died in 1916, only 18 months old. And when his mother went to the priest for a little consolation, look what the priest said to her. He would have grown up to be nothing but a gangster anyway. Yeah, words of comfort. But look at the discrimination there. I'm sure, and the Italians aren't the only ones who had discrimination against them. Every single nationality had discrimination against them in one way or another. What about this mystery? What is the mystery of this grave, considering that Giuditta's surname was never Sonsieri? And in the cemetery, the family is buried to the front and off to the right. This grave is off way in the back and off to the corner of the left. And it's etched in stone, Sonsieri. That was never her name. You can find out by reading the book. This ship manifest from July of 1902 lists on line 11 a person by the name of Antonio Paoletti from Bagni di Lucca. His name appears on several other ship manifests from 1902 through 1905, yet I saw his death certificate with my own eyes in Pistoia. There he is. So we walk the research. There's only so much you can learn from Ancestry.com and Heritage.com and FamilySearch.com and FindAGrave.com and this.com and that.com. And there arrives the moment when you say, if I can connect the dots, but I gotta have the dots to connect. How do you get the dots? Guess what, folks? You go to the places where the dots are, and then you do research, and then you ask for an appointment. Look at this. That's what I had to do for all these different places. You think I just walked in off the street? No. Here's the Arcidiocesi di Lucca, Archivio Storico Diocesano. Look at this. Domanda di ammissione. For me. This is me. Here it is, me, Susan Paoletti. I use my Italian name when I'm Susan Paoletti Nelson. And what did I use to show who I am? My passport. All right. So here, Archivio di Stato, Anagrafe. Look at this. Some of the books inside that room are from like the 1400s. Arcidiocesi di Lucca. This is the headquarters under the Archbishop's Chancery, responsible for its archives. Look at this, the Anagrafe di Pistoia. These ladies were very helpful. They didn't speak a word of English, but they were very helpful. And who's the ufficio della propositora? Michele Arcangelo Pontebuginese. Pontebuginese is this little town. But these people don't just float around on the street. They are in these places. And here is where the archives of Pistoia are. It just so happens that the sun was shining on that little door right there. And here is the church archives in Pontebuginese and the Municipio di Pontebuginese. And here is the archives office in Lucca. These buildings have been there for 500 or 600 or 700 years, who knows? But that's not all. A 12-mile walk. I took a 12-mile walk. It was a Sunday. And I thought, gee whiz, you know what? I'm here. I'm here now. I'm going to go and see my relatives. I haven't seen them in 40 years, but I'm going to go visit my relatives. I know some of them are dead, but I'm going to go visit my relatives because when they have a house, they keep it forever. So there was no train, there was no bus, there was no Uber, only my feet. So I started walking and I could see in the distance up the mountainside. Pietrabona is a little village of 273 people. That's it. And so I proceeded the walk. A 12-mile walk up a mountain in search of yet more information. Here's the La Chiesa. This is this little town, this little church in the center of Pietrabona. It's called Good Stone for a reason, because the whole town is made out of stone. These are stone buildings. This is it. Stone paths, stone buildings, the whole thing. And as I was entering Pietrabona, I looked up. There was this really old man who was sweeping his patio. I looked up at him and said, Dov'è la famiglia, l'abitazione della famiglia Zè Pellicci? And he looked down at me and he waited for a moment and he said, oh, signora, tutti sono morti. They're all dead. So instead of visiting them, I visited their cemetery. I visited their graves. So here are a couple of chapters. I just threw this in randomly because a religion runs through it. A religion runs through it for all of us. And at some point, maybe the core beliefs, maybe the style beliefs morph, change, evolve. But the traditions, the customs, the rituals from which those religions are derived, oh boy, those are pretty hard to break. And so you've got the first communion in 1905, baptism 1914, confirmation 1926, communion 1997. That's 100 years of ritual right there. But then a religion doesn't only reflect those kinds of events, it also reflects the history of the immigration experience. So here is Pellicci family in the old land, and here's Pellicci family in the new land. In loving memory of Frank Pellicci, funeral mass held at St. Alphonsus Church and interment at Graceland Cemetery. Here's St. Alphonsus Church. You think those streets look like that now? No, of course not. But St. Alphonsus, the family's parish for more than 100 years. I was baptized at St. Alphonsus. And look at here, over here is Cristina Federighi and Luigi Federighi. Are they my ancestors? I have no clue. I mean, there's only so much genealogy you can do before you say, wait a minute, there's something I have to do with this. I met a woman who had a genealogy chart that expanded the size of this room. Did it matter? She was going all the way back to the 1300s. She could tell you the name of everybody, and she couldn't tell you anything about any of them. That is not what this is. This is not genealogy for the sake of genealogy. This is so we can learn something from our ancestors. So what about the food from the old country? Oh, food binds people together more than anything, folks. You sit down for a shared meal, especially if it's a shared meal from homeland, and boom, you've got an instant connection there. Here is the people, my ancestors, food from the old country. Biscotti. Oh, please don't say biscotti. Please don't say biscotti. It's biscotti. I would like for all of you to to pronounce this word after me. Biscotti. One more time, biscotti. And one more time, biscotti. Thank you. Learning takes place in groupings of threes. Remember that. And here's biscotti dipped in the bean santo. When bean santo is like a sweet wine. It's not a liqueur, it's a sweet wine. And here's castagnaccio. It's a chestnut flour cake. Don't try to make it with your good white flour. It's not flour, it's the castagnaccio. It's chestnut flour. That's how you get chestnut flour cake. And then here is ragu alla toscana. Oh boy. Everybody knows that. And here is tamarindo. I can't tell you how often I drank tamarindo as a kid. This little syrup, you put this much in a tall glass, pour it with water, boom, you're good to go. And mostly for the kids, the adults were drinking the bean. And somehow or another, I acquired this spoon. This is a spoon that Judita brought with her to the New World in 1902, and I cherish this spoon. Somehow I got it, and there it is. Do any of you have these kinds of gadgets floating around in your kitchen or maybe your basement or in a box somewhere or an attic or something? Okay, so here's a coffee grinder. Here is a glass jar with a metal lid, probably for the flour. Here's the pantry. I remember this pantry. Here's a flour sifter and a meat grinder. And here is a table sweeper. This table sweeper that I have in my kitchen is made out of silver. It's a silver, and you take it and you take the little dustpan and you wait a minute, and there we go. And then wait a minute. There you go. And then you scrape the little crumbs off the table with it. Isn't that cool? And look at this. This is a saw. I have this saw in my garage, folks. It's not for sale. This saw has a mahogany handle. Can you imagine that? A saw with a mahogany handle. And this is probably, I don't know what it is, maple. I don't know what it is. And look at this, these awls. All right, so there you have it. And then finally, we get to the conclusion. The conclusion. Look at this. Judita came when horses were still common, when horses trotted down the middle of Chicago streets. Automobiles were becoming a more common sight, along with the electric streetcar, which took more than 2 hours to go a distance that now you can go in about 30 or 40 minutes. The high-wheeler was a rudimentary automobile. How many of you know this? That was manufactured by Sears Roebuck and Company. Can you believe it? A car made by Sears Roebuck? Until it was soon replaced by mass-produced Model T Ford and, of course, Indianapolis. Remember Indianapolis with its Studebaker? And then there was the Marmon and the Premier. It all came from Indianapolis, just down the road a piece. Now look at this, these horses. So Judita and her children came when roads were mud, when vendors sold down the alleyways, when many still rode horses through town. And she watched the paving of roads and the flying of planes, and she lived long enough to hear about the first woman to fly across the ocean in 15 hours that had taken her and her children a couple of weeks to cross in a boat. What changes did your ancestors witness during their lifetime? What changes have you witnessed during yours? So our ancestors offer a set of values passed down from one generation to the next, and it's universal. It's the same thing in Japan. It's the same thing in Africa. It's the same thing all over the world. Indeed, it is through the anchoring of values that common ground can be found in succeeding generations among families of all societies. So why is it important to learn about our ancestors, if not to glimpse nuances of the family from long ago in order to understand dynamics of the family in the present? And I'm just going to read a part of this from the back cover. of this book. Giuditta Federighi was barely in her 30s when her husband was stricken with tuberculosis, the scourge at the turn of the 20th century. What was she going to do as a widow and the mother of 6 small children? Ultimately, she left her homeland, braving a journey by herself with all of them. On Christmas Eve, when she and her children walked off the plank of a ship onto Ellis Island, she faced the unknown without the benefit of the English language or anyone who could help. They would finally arrive in Chicago's little Tuscany, where the young daughters would work in the sweatshops and the sons would work on the streets or down the alleyways. They would attend school only a little and sacrifice as one family unit to raise themselves up and out of poverty. Giuditta's family tapestry would continue on into future generations in a new land called America because of her courage and vision. As you read, you may find yourself reminiscing, remembering such moments from your own family stories. No matter from what ancestral home your relatives immigrated, they were brave, and every heritage can take pride in its contributions to humanity. And this is something that I'd like for you to think about. We are the ancestors of the future generations, of our families, and we are the future generations of our ancestors. And those ancestors never even knew us. And yet they profoundly impacted on the lives of each one of us seated here. And that's the end of my presentation, and I ask you for your...
Wonderful presentation. Thank you, Susan.
I would like to also just, once again, I have a business card. If any of you have a book club or you live in a retirement community, I would enjoy giving this presentation there, and you can see me afterwards if you would like any of those objects, the book or whatever. Okay.
Okay, we're happy to take questions from the auditorium.
Oh,
Susan, that was wonderful. I saw some of my ancestors, even though they're not Italian in there. But did more Italian immigrants stay in New York, or did they come to Chicago? The Polish community in Chicago is the largest, I think, in the country. But what was the distribution of the Italian immigrants?
it's interesting you should ask that. There are 3 cities in the country, really, where the Italian population is, but it doesn't matter about Italian. It could be any group of people. But in terms of the specific Italians, it was New York, Philadelphia, and Chicago. However, do you know where the largest, in terms of geographic area, the largest Little Italy is? San Diego. Geographically, San Diego has the largest area of a Little Italy. And it seems like these Little Italies pop up all over the place. I mean, I had no idea that there's a Little Italy in Kansas City. I mean, come on, really? So, and there's probably a little Bohemia in Kansas City. There's a little France in someplace else. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they just went all over the place. So does that answer your question, Don?
Yes.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I do.
Well, of course.
Susan, thank you for capturing so much of what we're missing. But as each generation gets older, the younger generation seems to be losing even more. So you are able to save that by your book. I think there are ways we can save this too. One suggestion, I know that walking it is certainly wonderful, but the internet is a great way to reach other family members that we don't even know are family. In our case, this little town of Calascibetta on the top of a mountain in middle of Sicily, I only heard it a couple times mentioned by my father. I said, well, they had to be a bunch of peasants that came here out of desperation. by having the internet and connecting with cousins. We found a cousin in Belgium, Sicilian,
Hmm.
but born there, knows the village. Tell us about it. And it's an archaic village, not filled with peasants, but people that were just as bright as us, not with the same internet and no cell phones. But we learn so much if we connect with those people. Were you able to do any of that with respect to family members that filled in gaps or told you stories or shared histories?
Yeah, for about 70 years.
So yes, it was a
I
life.
mean, I grew up with these people. I grew up with the people that came over on the boat.
Didn't need the
I
internet.
didn't need the internet. I had the people themselves tell me these stories. Yeah, which is why it can be why I can talk about it so descriptively and so
Do you,
authentically.
are we finding that our kids are as interested as we are?
Well, I think each generation, I devote a whole chapter of this book to what it means to become an American. And that each generation has other, shall we say, genetic material that flows through its veins in our country, especially or in North America. And so they become, they're part of the homeland genetic material as well as every other. I mean, I married somebody who was of Swedish and Danish descent. So what do you think my children are? Do they care about, they just shrug their shoulders when I talk about the Italian in them. And yet sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll ask me questions. So there you have it.
Do you think that those that came here, their struggles is what helped make America great, and that we're kind of missing that kind of a struggle by having us give kids so much that we've got the best kids money can buy instead of them growing up with the kind of hardships that our ancestors faced?
Yeah, well, they have different struggles though, don't they?
Yeah. Some people here are getting kicked out.
They have different struggles. They all have, each generation has its struggles, but
We have more questions.
A lot of your research, I see personally, you went to Italy, which is wonderful, and you had relatives that talk. So because I'm from Jewish descent and because of the background, Holocaust stuff, my relatives didn't talk about anything. They would. So my question is, would you be interested to do a simple, if there's such a thing, like a class for beginners? Because I could see you went deep. I mean, you were this, I mean, you did a lot of research in Italy itself. Well, you know, I can't go to Israel, but I do know some research. When I went for my DNA, is I found out I have an uncle like who started a kibbutz, but I don't know how to get the information. Is there any way you would be interested in starting?
so there are study groups, there are genealogical studies, there are genealogical workshops all over the place in libraries.
Most libraries have that.
Oh my God, and absolutely. The Library of Arlington Heights, the Library of Glenview, the Library of Northbrook for that matter. Arlington Heights has a very good library and a very good
What
section.
about
of
Des
the-
Plaines? Do you know that?
Probably Des Plaines, but you can call these places, they all do.
Didn't know that.
Absolutely. And there are also genealogical societies that you can simply Google.
I don't.
Genealogical societies. Just Google genealogical societies, Chicago area. You'll have more information than you can possibly know what to do with.
Along that same line. Yeah, it
Thank
was a
you.
wonderful presentation. Thank you. Along that same line, what would be the first step, other than going to one of these societies? If you're doing some research on your own, what would be the first step? Can you tell us the first
Okay,
step?
is there a way that I can pull this up? What, look, let me see. Is there a way I can pull this up again, or is it still possible? Look, okay, look. Wait a minute, let's see. Wait a minute, where's the, let me show you. Nope, it's not there. Wait, just be patient with me for a moment. Let me find it, because I'm answering your question.
Our new secretary, Julie.
Here, right here.
But by the way, wait, Susan, our new secretary, Julie, is the head of the Family Research Center in Winnetka, I think it is. It operates out of one of the churches there, where you can go and get information. I know this is research that's done through the Mormon Church, but they do marvelous research, and that's one resource you can ask her when
Okay,
she's
so,
here.
Karen, right? Yeah. Oh, Becky. All right, so here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 places you can start right from the desk in your office at home. Here's ancestry.com, heritage.com, and one little tidbit leads to another little tidbit leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. Here's heritage statueofliberty.org. Here's archive, well, that's not gonna, Luca, familysearch.org, genealogybank.com, findthegrave.com, newspaperarchive.com. I think this lady over here had a question.
Let me
About it. Depending on how you feel about it, I'm thinking maybe the app ChatGPT, which is free, may be helpful. It won't actually find a person, but if you have facts, it's AI, but I'm finding it helps with a lot of things lately. Yeah.
What to say about that? I didn't do that.
Susan, I want to add something over here. That's here. Here.
Go
You talked about following the food. It's an interesting thing. I lived in Texas for 33 years, and we had a discussion going on this morning at breakfast with Jack and Gail, Barry. In Texas, and I can bring up two examples of this, there are pockets of ethnicity that you wouldn't even begin to imagine. One, very German. Outside of Austin is a town called New Braunfels, excuse me. Everybody has trouble pronouncing it. And when you drive into this town, you'd swear you're in Wisconsin by the names on the mailboxes. But the most fascinating one for me in all the years that I lived there, how many people here have ever heard of lutefisk? Lutefisk. Norwegian. Yeah, it is a dish that is reviled by everybody. And for many, many years, I was affiliated with a company based in Minneapolis, and I worked with a lot of Minneapolitans, many of whom were of Norwegian extract. While living in Dallas, my second practice wife came from a second town, a really tiny town in Texas, population of 100 maybe. And we used to get what was called the Heiko News Review. Remember when David Letterman used to do small town news? Well, this was a glaring example of it. I was reading the Heiko News Review. We would get that weekly. I was at the table in the kitchen after dinner, and one of my work friends called me up. What are you doing? I said, I'm reading the Heiko News Review. Well, what's new in there? I said, well, Islaby, Battershell, and Virgil visited their kids in Fort Worth, and this one had a new cow. Oh, here's something interesting. The 12th annual Lutefisk Festival is going to be held December 1st and 2nd, 2 nights, in Cranfills Gap, Texas. Where the bleep is Cranfills Gap, Texas? I said, you want to go? And it gave ticket information. So we bought tickets and we went to the Lutefisk Festival in Cranfills Gap. Here's a pocket of Norwegians. Now the town for this weekend, when the Lutefisk Festival would happen, the size of the town would triple for the weekend because people came in to go to the Lutefisk Festival. So there's stories like that when you mention about San Diego and the Italians. They're all over the place.
Yes,
There's the Jewish Genealogy Society of Illinois,
there you go.
which meets once a month on Sundays at Temple Bethel.
There you go.
And they will, in Northbrook, and they will help you with finding different, like I found out the boat that my father came from Cuba to the United States on because he had come from Europe and couldn't get in here and went to Cuba. So they will help you with, and they have lectures as well on how to learn about your genealogy. Unfortunately, a lot of it, went to Europe to my father's town. A lot of it was lost bombed and lost during the war. Although certain things, like I got his original birth certificate, but I had to sign a statement that I was a direct ancestor. They wouldn't give me my aunt's birth certificate. So there's certain rules about those kinds of things as well. Pardon me?
There's a question over here. There's a question over here, Ron.
I was wondering if the Holocaust Museum in Skokie was a resource.
Well, I don't know, but there's another question over here.
Another question?
I've got one here while you're walking over.
No, there's another question over here first.
I was very curious how you found out what boat your ancestor came over on. How do you get that information?
ellisisland.org, and then a lot,
Well, please let her respond.
and then a lot of patience while you literally look for a needle in a haystack. And you find that person and you say, oh my God, it's only taken me 6 weeks, but there it is.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You,
There's a question over here.
yes, many of the Jewish immigrants who came here had sponsors. Was that also true of your ancestors
No.
as well?
That's why I pointed out about Umberto Masucci on line 28, but line 25, she came by herself. And the only thing, there was no sponsor. All she knew was that there was Hull House. And she didn't even know about Hull House until she actually made it to Chicago. Oh, well.
Or you could sneak in.
She didn't sneak in. She came here legally. But there's one reason that I'm doing this. And it's not just to thump my book, although I'd like to do that too. But the whole issue of immigration right now is so confusing. It's so chaotic. And immigrants are not vermin, but there is a way for them to come. And so I'll just leave it at that. Yes, anybody else?
I think it's time for pizza. Thank you so much, Susan.
If any of you want a business card because you have a book club or you live in a retirement community, I'm happy to give you one. Or if you want to buy the book. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'd like to clarify. Thank you so much. Can I contact you?
Absolutely.
At 81 to do the search.
There you go.
Do you have a book?
I do have a book. It's $25. It's right there in the white box.
Nice, very good presentation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate